Hey man, these 10 Pro Tools tips are guaranteed to speed up your workflow and increase your efficiency. Let's check it out. Oh, what's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Wavy Wayne from Wayne.wav.com. And of course, this channel is all about helping you to record and mix better and faster. And today, I got 10 tips that's actually going to help you to speed up your workflow in Pro Tools, making you a whole lot faster and more creative so that you can get jobs done in record time. All right. Now, I'm going to go in depth on all these topics throughout this video, but they include keyboard shortcuts, making templates, track organization, automation techniques, memory locations, using the Smart tool, creating subgroups, freezing tracks, using track presets, and working in grid mode. Let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, y'all. So first thing first, one of the biggest things that I always recommend is that you learn the most common keyboard shortcuts that Pro Tools has. Now, thankfully, I've made a video already covering 100 of the most useful Pro Tools shortcuts because there are hundreds. And no, you don't need to learn them all, but you need to know the ones that you do regularly. For example, you can use Command N to actually start a new session, or Shift Command N to create new tracks. You can even use T and R to zoom in and out on a session. But here's one of my favorite shortcuts of all time. One thing that I love to do is do batch commands over a bunch of tracks. So one keyboard shortcut that everybody should know and be using is the Option key. Now, if you're on a Mac, that's going to be Option. If you're on a PC, that's going to be Alt. But by holding the Option key, this allows me to do whatever command I'm going to do to every track in my session. For example, if I want to mute every track, I can hold the Option key, mute every track. To unmute, just hold the Option and unmute. This same thing works with using Insert. So if I wanted the same plugin across every track in my session, I just simply hold Option and go and choose a plugin, and in a couple of seconds you'll see now that plugin is on every track in my session. That also works for sends and a bunch of other controls. Option is just a huge modifier key that does a lot. Now you might be saying, Wayne, what if I only want to affect a certain amount of tracks and not every single track in my session? Well, there is also a function that we call do to selected in Pro Tools. And this would allow you to do whatever command you're doing only to selected tracks. So first thing I want to do is select the tracks that I want to affect. Let's say I want to select all of these kicks and snares and percussion tracks. I select those by clicking on the first one, holding Shift, and clicking the last one, which will allow me to select that range like I just did. And now what I'm going to do is combine two modifiers. So Option, we know Option is going to do to all. Shift, like I just mentioned, Shift actually allows us to extend and modify selections. If we combine those together, Option and Shift, that's how we get the do to selected function in Pro Tools. So I'm going to hold Shift Option, and let's say I want to remove this EQ from these tracks that I have selected. Boom. Only the tracks that are selected have been affected. Shortcuts are super helpful and useful in Pro Tools. Make sure you check out my video. I'll leave the description down below of the top 100 most useful shortcuts that Pro Tools has to offer. Hey man, I just want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, JZ Microphones. JZ Microphones has some great high quality handmade mics that are going to make your vocals and whatever else you recording sound superior. Make sure y'all check out their website. I'll leave a link in the description. Now let's get back to it. Next up on my list is going to be using and creating templates. Now, a template in Pro Tools just basically allows you a starting place so you don't have to start from scratch whenever you're recording or mixing. For artists out there, I definitely recommend that you use templates so that you don't get caught up in the minutia of setting up sends and returns for effects like reverbs and delays. And for engineers even, I like to use templates while I'm recording so that I can easily access effects that I might want to use to enhance the artist's recording experience. The dope thing about using a template with processing on it in Pro Tools is that you're not committed to it. You could always just take them off or change the settings later. So using it just gives you a great starting place so that you don't have to do repeatable tasks over and over again. So stuff that I know I'm going to do. Here's one way that I like to use templates. So you can either create your own templates, and I'll show y'all how to do that real quick, or you can actually just download a template from my website. I have a bunch of templates in all different styles and genres that'll help you really quickly to record and mix with some flavor on it. All right. But in this session, let's just say I'm going to be doing a mix. If I'm working on a mix, typically I don't want to start from scratch in my mixing session with like simple stuff like reverbs and sends and delays and all that kind of stuff. So one way that I could use a template is just by importing files or importing tracks, I should say, from a previous session that I've already used. To do this in Pro Tools, we're going to use the command called import session data. File, import session data. Now from this, I could choose any template or any session that I've liked, that I've done effects in already. So maybe this Chris Brown type vocal template session, I just want to select that. And then here you see I got a couple of delayed tracks and a chorus track and a reverb track that I want to bring in. I can just select those tracks and any other kind of information that I want to, hit OK. And in just a couple of seconds, I have these tracks with plugins and effects and settings already set on them just the way I like, right? Now, in other ways that we could use a template is just by simply opening up a template file. So I'm going to just search for a template file on my computer. In this case, I have my Chris Brown type vocal template. I'm just going to double click on that template file. This will prompt me to start a new session based on this template. So we're going to name this Wavy Brown. That's what we're going to name this. Wavy Brown. All right, fine. I like that. So I'm going to do that prompt. I'm just going to save it in my documents folder for this example. And voila, when I launch Pro Tools, you'll see that not only do I have a whole bunch of tracks with effects and stuff on it already, but this session is ready to go. I got a track where I can drag and drop my beat. I have a track that's designated to recording, tracks with lead vocal processing all on it, from auto-tune, EQs, de-essers, everything on it, how I would typically process a vocal, right? And the dope thing is, if I don't want to use any of these or I don't like the settings, I can always bypass them, remove them, change it, modify the settings. But it gives me a great starting point to be able to work really quickly in my session. So let's say you set this up in a way that you love it and how you want to. Maybe you made it completely from scratch, or you downloaded one from my website, Wayne.wav, and you have made some modifications. After that, you can actually save this as a template your own just by going up to File, Save as Template. Once you do that, you give it a name, Wavy Brown 2.0, okay? And basically what I can do, I can save it in as a template inside the system, which I'll do. So I'll just go ahead and, in this case, let's add a category and we'll call it Wavy Custom, all right? I hit OK. Hit OK. And then next time when I'm in my new session dialog box, by hitting Command N, of course, if I choose to create a session from template, I can go over to my template groups here and you see Wavy Custom and I got my Wavy Brown 2.0. I can start a session just like we see here with a bunch of stuff already set up, ready to go for me. Another tip that I would like to give y'all is session organization. It's so important to organize your tracks so that you can move around more efficiently, and just kind of knowing where stuff is, having stuff visually color coded and organized in a way that you do all the time is just going to make you work in a smoother workflow. So I always like to start off by making sure that tracks are named appropriately. So to name a track or rename a track, all you have to do is double click on the track's nameplate. That'll pop up this little dialog box so you can name it. Maybe instead of "this is not a kick," this is actually an 808, right? You want to give tracks a name that you resonate with, something that you're familiar with, that you will be able to identify. Sometimes you might be mixing on a song and there's some crazy synth sounds and you just want to call it a dog barking synth because it reminds you of a dog barking, so that when you hear it, you'll know which one to go to. So after I get my tracks all named, the next thing that I typically do is go through and move them around and put them in groups. So for example, I want all of my drums and percussion to be together. And then I'll take that a step further by selecting all of those tracks, double clicking on the color bar down here at the bottom, which opens up my color palette. And I'll just give these tracks a unique color. right? That way each groups, I know that all my drums and percussion are this brown gold color, right? I got a piano track right here. Maybe I want to make that piano pink, pink piano, right? And typically I'll do stuff like that where like if I got guitars, they'll be green, right? And synths, slime. And we got a bunch of vocal tracks that I could. So I got a bunch of lead vocal tracks here that maybe I want to make those a nice bright orange color. And then we got several tracks for the chorus that we can separate into other colors as well. But by having these tracks color coded, and if I go over to the mix window, you can see that those color codes follow here too. We can take this a step further though, because one thing that's also going to help me navigate this session a lot better is that if the clips themselves were also color coded to match the track's color coding. Here we need to go to the preferences. So I'm gonna go to the setup menu, choose preferences. And then in the display tab of the preferences, over to the right, we have all our color coding preferences. So the default track color coding is based on the track type. That's why by default, all audio tracks are blue and all master fader tracks are red. The clip color coding, however, I want to make that to match the track color. So I'm going to hit OK, and then automatically you'll see that my clips are automatically matching the color of the tracks that they are on. That's just going to make things visually more easy and accessible to work with, right? And a whole lot easier to kind of jump around in the session. Another technique that I love to use is subgrouping. Subgrouping is the basically you are combining the outputs of multiple tracks to one channel so that they can be processed at one place. Now, this still gives you the ability to process the tracks individually, but also gives you another leg up on processing the tracks as a group. Let's take a look at how I might do this. So you can do it from either the mix or the edit window, but I'm going to do it for the mix window because I think it's a little easier for me to see. Right. So let's say I got my drums. I got all my drums together and I want to be able to affect the drum group, like a drum kit sound as a whole. Maybe do some overall drum compression on it. So I got all of my drum tracks selected, and typically a submaster is going to be a stereo aux input track. But let's take this a step further. With the new additions and Pro Tools, we can actually create a folder track, and what this is called a routing folder. So I have these tracks selected, and in this case, I'm going to go up to the track menu, and I'm going to hit move to new folder. Super key here. And in this type, I want to choose not a basic folder, but a routing folder, and I'm going to choose drums. Also, very important here, I don't know why Pro Tools doesn't automatically check this button, but I want to route the tracks to the new folder that they're going to go to. When I hit create, we'll take a look and see what's happening. So Pro Tools just created this new drums folder track, right? With the input of the drums bus. For anybody who's new here, a bus is simply just an internal routing in Pro Tools that allow you to move signals within the DAW itself, right? So we're using the drums bus as the input to this track, and the outputs to all of my drums track are following the drums bus, all right? Now, the benefit of this is that, yes, I can individually affect the 808 and the kick and the clap and all of these different percussion sounds with inserts and sends, but I can also affect them, the overall group of them, by using this folder track, right? This routing folder. I can put a compressor or EQ over the overall drum set and change the sound as needed. Using a routing folder for this actually has an additional benefit that I can actually fold these up. So to save real estate on the screen in both the mix and the edit window, you see how those are now folded into a folder track. I can open or expand those folders so that it basically gives me a lot more space to work with. And when you have large sessions, it's going to be crucial for you to be organized and really using those folders to the full potential. So I love folder tracks now, routing folders particularly for creating subgroups. No longer do I need to create a stereo aux input track, but if you're interested in that method, I will leave that method as well down in the description below. All right, so now let's talk something else that's going to help us be more efficient. And in this case, it's going to be memory locations. Memory locations can be used for a lot of different things in Pro Tools, but right now I'm going to be focusing on marker memory locations. So if you see in the ruler here, in my little ruler bar up here, I have my markers ruler. This is going to allow me to basically set markers at different points in my song, which is going to allow me for easier navigation and easy identification of what section of the session I'm in at any given time. So most of the time, I like to start off by placing a marker in the very beginning and calling that the intro. To create a marker, we can either hit this plus button, and let's just call that intro. Or we could, wherever we at, we can hit the enter on the numeric keypad, and wherever your playback cursor is, that's where the marker is going to be created. So if I'm going to call this, let's just call this chorus 1, right? And you see now I got intro, I got chorus 1, and let's just call this section. I'm going to hit enter again on the numeric keypad. If you don't have a numeric keypad, this won't work. We're going to call this chorus 2. Whoop. And so on. Let's just hit another one, right, and call that bridge. And what I want y'all to notice, and then we'll just call this chorus 3. What I want y'all to notice is that each one of these markers has a number, right? Now, you can assign it a number if I didn't want it, but I could assign numbers all the way up to 999 for each of these memory locations that I'm creating. So I'm creating them, and right now, chorus 3 is marker 5. Now, this is super useful because if I'm in the mix window and I want to be mixing different parts of the song without having to go back to the edit window and jump around, I could easily just recall these memory locations. I'm going to show you 2 ways to do that right now. One of them is that if I just go up to the window menu and open up my memory locations window, you see the shortcut for that is Command numeric 5, right? I can easily jump around from section to section of my song just by clicking on the name of the memory location. And if I go over to the edit window, you'll see how my playback cursor is moving to each of these locations as I play them. Now, I could keep this little window open while I'm in the mix window. So when I'm doing my mixing and I want to jump from section to section, I can easily just, you know what, let's listen to chorus 1. Okay, now let's jump and listen to the intro without having to go back and forth between these pages, thus saving me a little time. All right. Another way that we can recall memory locations is actually my favorite way, and that's using the numeric keypad. So to do this, you just want to hit period, the number of the memory location, and then period again. Again, that's period, the number of the memory location, and period again. And as you see, I just jumped over to the intro, and the session will automatically jump there. So if I wanted to jump to chorus 3, that'll be period 5 period. You hit it just like you would hit a combination code on your PlayStation or something like that, and it will take you right there. All right. All right, now let's talk about something a little bit more basic, and that's going to be the smart tool. If you're not using the smart tool, you're really doing yourself a disservice. But the smart tool combines the 3 most used Pro Tools edit tools all in one interface, right? So basically, this gives me the ability to have my selection tool, my grabber tool, and then also my trim tool, so I can make trims as well. To access the smart tool, all you want to do is click the bar right above here. You see that right there? That little bar right above the trim tool, the selector tool, and the grabber tool. When you click that bar, that activates the smart tool, giving you access to all 3 of these common tools. Now, to use each one, you want to either place the cursor in the top half of the clip. That's going to give you your selector tool, so you can just click and drag and make selections. You can place the cursor in the bottom half of the clip, which will automatically give you the grabber tool. Or if you go to either of the clip boundaries, that will give you your trim tool, allowing you to dynamically adjust the length of the clip. The smart tool, though, has one added hidden benefit, and that's the fade tool. So let's say I'm doing some edits, I'm doing some trims like that. Oh, you see that right there? I just used the letter A to actually trim from the start of the clip to the insertion. By the way, if you really want to go deep on these shortcuts and other workflows and methods of using Pro Tools, I do have a full Pro Tools certification course where you can be certified by Avid as a user or operator in Pro Tools. I'm actually enrolling right now, and you get live classes as well as pre-recorded content by signing up. So all you got to do is click the link down in the bio, right there, the description, and then register to enroll in the next Pro Tools certification course. All right. So the hidden trick that I was talking about, though, is the fade tool. If I bring my cursor up to any of these corners, the clip boundaries right there in the corner, I can click and drag to extend a fade off into my clip, right? Same thing at the end of the clip. Bring it up to the clip boundary at the corner there, and that'll give you a fade out. And if I have two clips that I want to fade together, maybe I did a cut right there and I got these overlapping. If you bring that smart tool with your cursor down to the bottom between the two clips where they meet, this will allow you to do a crossfade between two individual clips, man. The smart tool is invaluable. Let's talk about how you can actually save yourself time by optimizing your CPU usage. If you're using a lot of CPU intensive plugins, maybe I got some auto tune on here. Get my auto tune. Maybe I'm using like who knows, like my Fab Filter Pro L2, right? A lot of these plugins actually start to take up a lot of the CPU. By the way, if you ever want to check your CPU, just go up to the window menu and choose system usage. And this will let you know how much Pro Tools is consuming of your total CPU. Right now, we're not doing too bad in this session. But if I was running out of CPU and getting errors and glitching and Pro Tools keeps stopping and all of this nonsense, one thing that I can do is actually freeze the track. Now, freezing the track will temporarily freeze that track, tracks that you don't need to do any more editing to or change the processing on it. You can freeze them up, and which will free up the CPU resources. So the freeze button is right here. All right. Look at that right there. There's my freeze button. Right now, this track is not frozen. But if I hit that freeze button, Pro Tools is going to render down that audio. It's going to deactivate the plugins that are on this track. It's going to not allow me to edit anything, but I'll still be able to hear it and hear everything and all of the full processing, but it's not consuming my CPU anymore. Matter of fact, let's just go and look and see, hey, my system usage has dropped a few points already, right? Even though we wasn't using much at all, the system usage has still already dropped a few points. Freezing is a huge plus, a huge bonus for anybody who's working with limited resources. Maybe you don't need a new computer after all. You just need to use a few tricks like freezing your tracks so that you can free up to resources to work on tracks that you're actually giving attention to at that time. All right, this next tip, I love it so much. I'm so happy that Pro Tools put this in. And this is using track presets. So let's say that I have a certain vocal chain that I use all the time. And I just know that I'm going to use this chain. I know I'm going to we just keep beating up on this track. Maybe I want LA2A on here. Right, and then maybe I like to use the Maxim. Don't tell anybody. I like to use the Maxim limiter on my vocals. Right. So let's say every time I use a vocal, that I'm recording a vocal or mixing a vocal, I want to use this chain. Maybe not every single vocal, but I could get specific, you know? And this works good too. Maybe you producing in Pro Tools and you use a series of plugins to create a certain effect, or you've altered a synth. This is going to be really good in helping you to recall that sound. So maybe it's your signature sound that you want to do all the time. So one thing to do here is that I'm just going to go right click and I'm going to hit save. I'm right clicking on one of these insert positions. So over here to the left of it where the dot is, and I'm going to hit save track preset. So I can name it Arshad lead vocal, or I'm just going to name this rap vocal, right? And under the category, we're going to go under wavy, right? And I'm going to just save it under there. And I got other stuff I can do, but I'm going to just hit OK right now. And then the next time, let's just get a new audio track, right? The next time I want to record a vocal, all I got to do is right click on this insert selector again. and hit recall inserts, go over to Avid, go over to my Wavy. Here's my rap vocal preset that I just saved. And then within a couple of seconds, all of the plugins, including their settings that I just pulled up, are on this new track. So track presets, they can save you a lot of time for doing redundant settings that you do. Now, it's going to be great for anybody who's like doing podcasting or production. That's probably where you'll find the most use out of this track preset feature. Let's talk automation. Automation basically allows you to record changes to your mix and have them play back in real time. Now, I don't recommend that y'all like wait to the end of the session like I used to do before I do all my automation. As soon as some effect or some process hits me that I feel like I want to automate, I just do it. You can always update it or change it. But basically, let me show y'all a little bit about automation. This is just a preview. If you want a full automation tutorial, I'll leave the link to that in the description as well, man, because I already did that for y'all, okay? So if I go to my automation mode selector, my favorite automation mode is touch, and I do go over the other automation modes in the video that you will find in the description of this video. So touch automation basically just allows me to only automate certain parameters that I'm touching, or as I'm touching them, the automation will be recorded. I'm going to switch over to my automation lane. Let's just say I want to automate some volume here, and I'm going to play this. All right. And as I'm playing it, if I want to automate here, all I got to do is grab the volume automation. Right. And then you see that those volume changes that I made are playing back. And let's just go over to the mix window so we can see the fader. You'll be able to see my fader there, moving up and down on its own, replaying the moves that I just recorded in as automation. So using automation in your session, you can literally automate everything in Pro Tools. You can automate plugins. Every parameter inside of a plugin, including the bypass, can be automated. So please, if you're not familiar with automation and you're not using it to its full potential, make sure y'all go down in the description and click that video to watch all about automation. All right, now this next tip that I'm going to give y'all will help you in the mixing phase. One of them for real is basically to split tracks up, right? So there's not much on this track that really needs to be split up, on this session that really needs to be split up. But let's say that I am recording artists and then they are very dynamic. Maybe they're quiet in the beginning and then they get louder at the end, right? One thing I like to do is, instead of fighting with pushing and pulling and doing all these different changes, because maybe in chorus 1, the delivery was one way, and then in chorus 3, he delivered it a different way with a little more energy. Instead of me trying to find a balance on the plugins that kind of works for both sections, what I'll do is typically just duplicate the track. I really only needed to do it one time, but I'll duplicate the track, and what I can do is just separate sections. So I'm going to make a selection and say, you know what, this section sounds different than this section, and I want to treat it differently. So I'll just select it, hit B, or use the separate clip command, right? And then I'm just going to drag this down. Now, I am holding the control key on my Mac. That'll be the Windows key on the PC, just to make sure that this clip doesn't slide in time, so I'm not changing the timing of it, only allowing me to move it up and down onto a different track. But now, this gives me full processing control that maybe, you know, this track, this section, he was closer to the mic, so I need to roll a little bit more low end off, or, you know, this one needs a little bit more auto-tune than this track, right? Yes, automation is one thing that you could do, but it might be a little bit quicker for you to just simply make a new track and split separate parts up and treat them differently on separate tracks. Now, my last tip is all about working in grid mode, man. Working in grid mode literally will save you so much time when it comes to editing. And the key to working in grid mode is to accurately find and lock the tempo in of the session that you're working on. Guess what? My very first video is on YouTube ever, the very first one that I uploaded, because I thought it was one of the most important, is how to find the tempo in Pro Tools and actually lock it into your session. Well, that video is still up, even though it's years old, but I use and explain a method called Identify Beat, which I'm not going to get into now because this video is already a little long, right? But if you really want to know the best way still to this day, nobody, I don't care whether you're using mixing key, even auto tune has the new detector thing, or Serato. I don't care what you use. Nothing is going to be more accurate for you at locking your tempo in a Pro Tools session than using Identify Beat, which will give you all of the benefits after you do that of using Pro Tools' most advanced editing mode, and that's the grid mode. It's going to make it easy for you to fly hooks, to do stutter effects and drops and move parts around. All kind of stuff just becomes so much simpler when you have the tempo locked into your session and you're using grid mode. Make sure you check out my Identify Beat video, also down in the description. I'm Wavy Wayne from Wayne.wav.com. Thanks for watching this video. Which one of these tips was your favorite? Which of them have you already been using, and which of them just was brand new to you today? All right, thanks for watching this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Be dope.